Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this February 22nd Manitowoc Area Coordinating Policy Meeting here in the beautiful city of Holland. We have a quorum, and so we'll start with introductions. And so if we can start on my left, and we'll move around the horn.
Al Meyer, Dillon Township.
Tom Elhart, Road Commission. Ken DeWeer, Fillmore Township.
Kevin Fleischer, City of Zealand.
Terry Nienhuis, Holland Township.
Nancy DeBoer, City of Holland.
Pankaj Raj with the MACC.
Steve Boltes, Executive Director of the MACC.
Blaine Cokes with the MAC.
Skip Keeter, Park Township.
Russ Taslao with Max Authority Board.
John Lanham, MDOT, statewide planning lanes.
Steve Redmond, MDOT, Grand Region Office.
Gallery.
Kelly Bowers with the MACC. Lisa Hookwater with the MACC. Carolyn Alston with the MACC.
Aaron Spicer with the MAC.
Good, thank you all for joining us. I'm filling in for Bill today, who is actually in a hospital in Columbus, Ohio, as we speak. So keep him in your thoughts and prayers. With that, I would look for a motion to approve the minutes as distributed.
So moved.
Have a motion
I'll support it.
and support. Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Good. And at the chair's discretion, we're going to take
Public comments.
number 3, and we're going to move it to the end, just before members' comments. The reason being is because if indeed we need to take action on that, we need a three-quarters majority, and we don't have that currently. So if we have a couple other additional members show up, then we could take action at that time. So with that, I'd move to number 2, public comment. Is there any members of the audience that have any comments they'd like to present? Thank you all. So we'll move into then number 4, contract for public sector consultants.
That's right. Included in the agenda packet is a memo from myself talking about a contract with public sector consultants. Kelly, for the last several months, has been talking about the West Michigan Prosperity Alliance and one of the projects that they are undertaking through something called the West Michigan Watershed Collaborative is looking at a study that looks at sustainable funding strategies for watershed management groups throughout the West Michigan Prosperity Alliance 13-county area. So that initiative and that effort to undertake this study received an $89,000 grant from the WMPA a number of months ago, and Kelly has been working with her counterparts in Grand Rapids and up in Muskegon, who also manage watershed projects and alliances and collaboratives in their respective areas as well. And I've brought together, I didn't realize this when we started this project, but there's 20-some different watershed groups within that 13-county area. So they've been reaching out to those various groups and getting information from them. And we are now at the point where we're ready to proceed and need some consultant assistance in undertaking some facets of the watershed study and essentially looking at some methodologies, different funding strategies or methodologies, and looking at those on a 13-county area. So it's a fairly significant undertaking in that regard. The steering committee did put out a request for proposals. We received 2 of those, and we sat down, reviewed and scored those, and it was found that the proposal that was submitted by Public Sector Consultants, who is a consulting firm out of the Lansing area, was very thorough, very detailed, very responsive to the RFP, and came in at the amount budgeted for this. So the recommendation is to enter into a contract with Public Sector Consultants to provide consulting services as we undertake looking at this funding methodology. They're going to be looking at 4 methodologies in particular. One, looking at a voter-approved millage, and not only the millage would be undertaken at the county level, but watersheds don't follow political jurisdictions, so there would be some allocation of the revenue that would be generated by a millage to the various watershed groups, so they're going to do that for the 13 county area. Also looking at a flat fee assessment, basing it on property classification, so looking at a flat fee is another methodology. And then we are looking for something innovative, something a little bit different. So the consultant's going to be looking at environmental impact bonds, which is fairly new for the state of Michigan. So actually the consultant was very excited about that as well, since it's something that they want to learn more about as well. And then also on a one county basis, looking at just Muskegon County, they're going to look at another methodology that makes an assessment based on the impairment status of the watershed. With 27 different watersheds within the 13 county area, there are different impairments and different degrees of seriousness. So that's another thing they're going to look. They're going to look at it, however, just with one county in that particular case. And then lastly, of course, we're enjoying a very successful public-private partnership regarding Project Clarity. There's a lot of interest on the part of watershed groups throughout the 13 county area to look at that as well. So there's going to be some interviews done with various entities, philanthropic entities and others that look at, the possibility of setting up different public-private partnerships in different parts of the 13 county area. So today, the motion for your consideration is authorization of staff to enter into a contract with public sector consultants to undertake the watershed funding strategies study for an amount not to exceed $50,000.
We have a motion,
Support.
and we have support. Any further discussion? I hear no further discussion. Call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Road stream crossing inventory grant application. Kelly.
So included in your packet was a memo about the grant. And so I just want to summarize some of the key points of that. This is a grant application that we did submit on February 10. And one of the goals of this grant is to establish a volunteer program to inventory road stream crossings. So this is through the Michigan Clean Water Corps, which is the same organization that we worked with to establish the macroinvertebrate monitoring program that we currently do. And we've also received funding from them in the past to support our river cleanups. So we have a history of working with this same organization. This road stream program is fairly new. They started the program 2 years ago as a pilot. We had applied at that time. They only funded one project, and ours was their second choice. So we were encouraged to reapply, so we are doing that this year. The goals of the grant would be to inventory 58 road stream crossings in the watershed over a course of a year. The time frame of the grant, if it were to be funded, would be May 1st of this year through May 31st of 2017. And the 58 road stream crossings were selected based on previous inventories that had been done or assessments. When Mary Fales was at the MACC, she did an erosion assessment at, I think it was like 129 road stream crossings. So it was a very simplified assessment just looking at the bank erosion at road stream crossings. This new assessment process is extremely robust. It assesses the condition of the road, the condition of the culvert, the condition of the stream banks. We also will take measurements in terms of the size of the stream flow. It's about a 2-page form, takes anywhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours to complete. So it would be a rather robust undertaking, and the use of volunteers would certainly assist in the effort. The project budget in total is just under $20,000. We're just asking for just under $7,500 from the grant, and that would cover staff time, mileage, and then the equipment that would be needed to conduct these inventories. So a large part of the project is being provided as match, both from the MACC and then our partner agencies. We have very strong support for this project from both county road commissions, Ottawa County and Allegan County. They were both very supportive in terms of staff to have this information available to them in order to help prioritize some of the work that they would do in fixing road stream crossings. So we will work with staff from both county offices when we are inventorying the crossings in the respective counties. And then also we have support of both the Water Resource Commissioner's Office in Ottawa County and the Drain Commissioner's Office in Allegan County. And then I forget how many, I think it was at least 15 or so volunteers from the community that had expressed interest, both in just kind of general community volunteers, but also the Holland Board of Public Works is a really great partner. I think their staff like to get out of the office and get in the field once in a while. So they love to say, yeah, we'll come out and help with this kind of stuff. So I think we're in a really good place to start this if we were to get the grant awarded, and hopefully the funders will see it that way as well. So today, since this is a fairly quick turnaround to start it in May, we are asking for action to be taken to designate Steve Boltheis as the authorized representative of the MACC for the purpose of signing and negotiating any grant agreements.
Quick question.
Yeah.
When this inventory is complete, the end goal then is to work with different sources to fix the problems you find then?
Right, exactly. The management plan identified road stream crossings as a source of sediment pollutants to the watershed, but didn't do anything to quantify or identify those sites. So the purpose with this inventory will help us to kind of prioritize where are the worst ones located, and then work with the road commissions, the drain offices, to try to get them on a schedule for repair.
Okay.
What training or qualifications do volunteers have to determine the condition of the tube and the roadway?
Right. One requirement of this grant is that we attend a training provided by the staff of the organization that provides the grant. So they will provide us the training necessary. So we will have a kind of a key group of folks, volunteers with the MACC staff, with the road commission staff, will be trained on how to carry out the assessments. So we will have at least one trained crew leader with the group of volunteers. So that definitely was a requirement, and then we have to keep track of how we train our volunteers. So there will be required training for all volunteers that participate. Yeah.
The memo mentions purchase of equipment. What type of equipment do you need for that?
Because of the measurements that are being taken, we need survey rods and clinometers to measure slope, stopwatches to time the stream, hard hats, flashlights in case we do need to crawl through culverts. I can't remember what Carolyn's laughing at.
Scuba deer?
Tape measures so we can make measurements. There's a whole list of maybe 12 different things that we need to purchase because we just don't have them on hand. And I think the equipment part of the budget is less than $2,000, so it's not really big ticket equipment
And you
items.
could probably use it again.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, John.
Will this include state trunk lines as well then, also?
Oh, boy. I don't know. I mean, we have the sites identified, and I have a map, and I just, off the top of my head, I'm not sure what
Okay.
crossings those are, if they're all county roads or not, but that's a good question, I can let you know. I think eventually, one goal out of this is that 58 is a very small proportion of the stream crossing. So part of this process would be to develop a long-term plan for completing an inventory of all of the road stream crossings in the watershed, which will take many, many years. I mean, we do have a pretty good idea of how many crossings there are, and it'll take a while to get to them all. But we'll figure out, that's one output of this, is we'll have a plan for how to continue this into the future.
I'll make a motion to approve it if there's no other questions.
Motion to approve,
I'll support it.
and we have support. Any further discussion? No further discussion, call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries.
All right, thank you.
And next, Kelly, you have a word of caution.
Yeah, so the last watershed item here, there's a memo and then the Lake Macatawa Water Quality Dashboard Report from the Grand Valley Annis Water Resources Institute. So I want to just kind of summarize some things first, and then we'll kind of take a look at the graphics in there. So this is a report that it was actually developed for 2014 as well. So we have a 2014 dashboard, a 2015. It's something that we will continue to do as part of Project Clarity, as long as the Annis Water Resources Institute is conducting monitoring in the watershed. And the plan is they will, at least for the next several years, they had a 5-year contract to start with. So this dashboard is based on the monitoring data that's being collected by the Annis Water Resources Institute. And just for the data they're collecting in Lake Macatawa, they are doing additional monitoring in the tributaries with fish, some other things, but this dashboard just reflects the data collected from Lake Macatawa. It also reflects a snapshot in time. They are sampling 3 times a year, so it's only 3 data points at 5 different locations in the lake. So it's not meant to be an accurate measurement of Lake Macatawa's water quality or a direct definitive measurement. It's a best guess based on the water quality at the time and the place that they actually took their samples. So there's a lot that can be inferred from this, but it needs to be looked at as a trend in data rather than absolute data. Other factors that really need to be taken into account with this data is weather conditions. We know from the history of monitoring that Lake Macatawa, the Macatawa watershed, is very weather-driven. We tend to get very high stream flows every time that it rains because we've done such a great job at channelizing that flow into drains and streams. So the more rain we get, the more pollutants are delivered into the lake. So it is a pretty direct correlation between high rainfall and higher pollutant measurements in the lake and in the streams. So these numbers represented in the dashboard report don't take into account the weather conditions. So you have to kind of view it through a lens of what was going on that year in terms of climate and weather. But the take-home message is that the trend that we're seeing in the data looks to be positive, where the numbers are heading in the right direction. And I did want to point out, too, this is a compilation of historic data and the current data from AWRI. So if you have the report in front of you, and I'll flip to the next one here. So there's 3 things that they're looking at: phosphorus, total phosphorus, the chlorophyll A, which is a pigment in algae, so that's essentially a measurement of algae, and then the Secchi depth, or how clear is the water. On each graph, you can see there's a blue line that kind of separates AWRI's data from the past 3 years from the historical data prior to that. So the last 3 years of AWRI, they were collecting in the spring, summer, and fall at 5 locations, and so those are averages of all of the samples that they took. The state's data from the Department of Environmental Quality is from 1982 through 2012. Theirs is also average concentrations, but they collected 5 monthly samples. So it's a little bit different protocol. So that's why they kind of distinguish between DEQ and historic data versus AWRI's data, because it is slightly different. It's not a direct comparison because there's more sample points in the DEQ's data, but they do sample at the exact same locations in the lake. And in that report, that first page does show you the 5 sampling locations. So again, if you look at the three graphics that are in here, you can kind of see where, again, the trend is positive. We're not where we need to be or we want to be yet, but we're seeing a very positive trend. In the phosphorus, numbers are decreasing. And it should be fairly self-explanatory, and that was really the point of developing this dashboard, is that it's a pretty clear, easy thing to look at and understand. But again, you need to understand some of the background, so it really isn't that simple. We're trying to make it as simple as we can, but that's where there's the narrative and the report that goes along with it. So the colors on here, again, should be fairly self-explanatory. We really want to be down in that green area that really is high-quality water. Yellow is where the state says we need to be for the total maximum daily load. Red is where we don't want to be, but that's where we've been hanging out for, well, since we've been monitoring Lake MACC. But again, the trend is very positive. Same thing with the chlorophyll A. This is a little different where we don't have a limit placed on chlorophyll on algae like we do phosphorus, but there still is an ideal range for a healthy system. So that's, again, the green, yellow, and red. We want to be down in that green area. We'll take the yellow area, but we've been hanging out in the red area ever since, since it's been recorded. But again, it's positive. And there's going to be, again, a lot of weather factors that go into this. We saw in 2012, it's not the highest there, but 2012 we had a lot of algae growth because there was less rainfall, cleared up the water. There was so much phosphorus there for the algae to grow. So, you have to kind of take into account those weather factors for the algae and the chlorophyll A as well. And same thing, same story on the SECI depth. With the SECI depth, so this is how far into the water can you see before objects start to disappear, and there's a black and white disc that's used to measure that. And so you look at the historic data here, there hasn't been a whole lot of fluctuation in that, but again, the last few years we're definitely seeing a positive trend. We want that number to be bigger. We want to be able to see deeper into the lake. So we're seeing that positively. And so again, where we get more rain, more sediments being delivered into the water, that's going to affect how deep we can see into the water as well. So 2012 or 2015 was a fairly dry year, so that certainly had an impact on the numbers that we see, but we also know that we're doing a lot of good conservation on the ground with the wetland restorations and farming best practices. So those undoubtedly have an impact as well. It's really hard to separate out how much each of those is having, but we know that the rainfall has a big impact, the conservation has a big impact as well. So the full monitoring report from 2015 that has all of the raw data and lots of charts and graphs and is at a much more scientific writing level. That full report is on our website. That includes data not only from Lake MACC, but also from the tributaries. In particular, they're monitoring around the wetland restorations at the Hayworth site and then also at the Middle MACC to try to quantify how much of an impact those wetlands are having. So the full report's on our website. I have a part of it here. I didn't print the whole thing, so if anybody wants to take a quick look at it here, otherwise it's on our website.
Any further questions or comments? Yes.
Kelly? I'm sorry.
No,
Oh.
Nancy?
So we're still kind of bad, but less bad than we've been.
Right.
And it's too early to tell the effect of the conservation efforts because weather can change results.
Right, and I guess it's difficult to get accurate measurements on how much is actually being reduced, how much phosphorus, how much sediment is being kept out of Lake MACC because of the restorations. So the Water Resources Institute is monitoring at the wetlands. So we'll have a pretty good idea of that. For the farming best management practices, we can only estimate the reductions. It's much more difficult to monitor those, and all of that costs money too. So we make our best guess at how much we're reducing, but then the ultimate measurement or test of that is what's happening in the lake.
So there are lakes in Michigan that score green on everything?
I imagine there are somewhere. I don't know that, I mean, this dashboard was created specifically for Lake Macatawa. I think the Annis Water Resources Institute did something very similar for Muskegon Lake. I don't know that a similar report exists for most other lakes. I mean, many lakes are monitored. I don't know that the data is presented in a similar way. But I think, and I have not seen the dashboard for Muskegon Lake, but we know that we're very similar to Muskegon Lake when it comes to especially the algae. They tend to have much more algae concentrations than we do, but.
None of these are really measuring toxicity.
Right, correct.
So it's a safe lake, just doesn't score high on these three things.
Right, and because the major reason that we're monitoring these is because of how they affect wildlife in the system, and how they affect the habitat for the wildlife.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kevin?
Yeah, do they monitor the flooding of the river at all, if, how often it goes over its banks or different heights? It seems to me like since the new wetlands came in, it doesn't flood as often, at least from when you ride over by El Harpani. It doesn't seem like goes over the banks as often there.
Yeah, at the locations where they are sampling, they do have discharge meters that measure when there's high events. So we know how high the river rose and how fast the water was going through there. So again, the AWRI is doing that at the sites where they monitor, because that data is important to look at the phosphorus and sediment and figure out loads, how much is really going down the stream. And then also the U.S. Geological Survey has a gauging station in Zealand at 96th Avenue where the river crosses. So that takes constant gauge height, so we know how high the river goes in flow events. And that data is all archived on their website, so we can go look up any year, any stretch of time and see the peaks. And hopefully over time we will see that those peaks are decreasing, that we're not getting the high spikes in the height of the river, the discharge of the river, that those are lessening as the wetlands are holding back water, as the agricultural practices are allowing more water to infiltrate and less to flow off the surface. Those kinds of changes happen very gradually, and I don't know that we've really taken a real close look at that yet to kind of compare, because it's called a hydrograph of how a river responds in a storm event. I don't know that we've really taken a look at those kind of side by side, because you also need to know how much rain fell to know how much it affected the river, and then you would have to compare the same kind of storms side by side to see if those peaks are being decreased, which again is the ultimate goal.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Thank you, Kelly.
All right, well, thank you all. I love all the great questions, so thank you.
Moving on to transportation issues. Elise has some interesting developments for us on the US 31 reconstruction and bridge improvements.
Thank you. I wanted to just bring to your attention an article that was in the Sunday paper of the Holland Sentinel. It's an article which we're very thankful to see. We met with Holland Sentinel staff and they agreed to have regular stories updating the community on US 31 construction. So the Sunday article does mention the open house, so I want to remind you all that that's coming up this week, Wednesday. So I encourage you to attend. And I have a few things as well that I wanted to share with you regarding US 31 reconstruction. So in your packets, I provided a few different things to you, and it is our sincere desire to get you as much information as possible so that you can share this news with whomever you think needs to hear this information. We want to be able to inform the community of this project and do what we can to minimize disruption. So the more people know about the project. Hopefully it'll at least alert people to it ahead of time. So the memorandum basically walks through the major steps of the project, beginning with the open house this Wednesday, which is being held at the Riley Street Fire Station from 4 to 6. I encourage you to attend. And then just in the matter of weeks, very soon here, the earliest work will begin, and you will start to see some lane closures. A great deal of utility work is going to happen at the beginning. And I had the opportunity to sit in on the pre-construction meeting with MDOT and the contractors and get to listen to the conversation about schedule. There is a lot that's going to be going on. We may not see it, but the utility work is going to be pretty significant, and they're planning on doing that before tulip time. All right. Then the next thing I want to bring your attention to is just some of the updates we've done to our website. You can see on the screen, and I mentioned this briefly last month when I met with you. All right, well, in the upper right corner, there's a tab there that says US 31 project. And when you click that tab, it'll take you to some additional details about the project. We've updated that with some information about the different stages. And then the other piece of information that we really want to make sure everyone's aware of is that MDOT has taken the project website and they've updated maps with their detours. So that information was provided in your packet, but that's public information for all to be able to access. So very briefly, I want to just tell you what some of the highlights are about some of the construction work that you can anticipate. And I think the important thing, I mentioned already the utility work that's going to be happening up front. There's been a very clear focus on suspending construction work during tulip time. But once tulip time is concluded, the crews will be out and they will be working on stage 2 of the project. And you will see southbound traffic moved over to the northbound side. So that will be 2 lanes of traffic. And you should be aware that there is a piece of a portion of the corridor where US 31 southbound will be reduced to 1 lane, and that's south of Janes. So be aware, there will be a bottleneck there, especially, I mean, we're anticipating, as what we've heard from MDOT, is that it's going to take a while for people to anticipate the project. Once they start driving it, the first 2 weeks are a headache for all. But we want people to know ahead of time that those 2 lanes will narrow to 1 and to be just aware of, you know, traffic will continue moving, but just to be aware of, you know, that the configuration is going to be significantly different than it is now. The other piece that I wanted to bring your attention to is the ramp work that's being done, and that starts mid-May through August. So there are some maps there that we provided for you that show the work that's being done. So there's stage 2 ramp work and there's stage 3 ramp work. And during that time, there are local detours that have been mapped as well. You know, this is something that we know many people use 120th Waverly Road in our community, and that will be a very busy corridor during construction. So just plan your routes accordingly and plan ahead when you're trying to get places. Let's see. Does anyone have any questions? I think, let's see. I looked for a pointer and I turned off.
You were
the-
shooting it at me, I was wondering.
That red dot.
Sorry, Steve. So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure you knew, stage 2 ramp detours and stage 3. So there will be a lot of changes. One of the things that we have, we're really pleased about, and I told you this last month, is that we sat down with MDOT staff and just expressed our desire to let the community know what's happening ahead of time. And so they have provided all these graphics. You know, you can see from these maps, there will be constant change. And so if you have not yet requested to receive email notification, I encourage you to do that, as well as others who want to have that detail. And there is a link on our project website that you can sign up very easily and get notified of major construction changes and schedule changes. All right, these are the highlights for you. And I guess the last slide here, I just wanted to remind you that, you know, we are really grateful for support from local media. So the Holland Sentinel has been great about making sure that the message is communicated, and we're really appreciating that. So it was nice to see that article in the paper on Sunday. Does anyone have any questions before I move on? All right, well, if you have any, just don't hesitate to let us know, and we will, you know, we as staff sat down this morning and we were discussing the stage maps, and, you know, if you have questions, we'll convey that, and, yeah.
I guess, what would be the estimated number of vehicles that are going to be rerouted with this?
That is a very good question, and I don't know the answer.
I know it's kind of the anatomy of a headache as we prepare for this. I mean, you know, you just know that it's something that has to get done, but people aren't going to be happy in the process, so
Yeah,
it's nice to quantify the amount of sacrifice and
yeah,
whatever.
I'm sure that's been analyzed, and I know that one of the pieces of this project is that it will have constant flow. So for example, we met with our freight planning task force, and they were really pleased to see that, you know, there was that constant motion. And they acknowledged it was going to be just messy in spots, and that's reality for them.
Right.
They were thankful that the project was being done, so.
Absolutely. Well, you
Yeah.
don't appreciate something till it's gone. So we're going to love our US 31 by next fall.
Yeah.
Might be crazy.
That is a great question, and I'll see if we can find an answer.
I was looking at the numbers on Friday, but I was more focused on something we were doing on the reduction on the local system. I don't, off the top of my head, I'd have to look at that closer. I mean, I know what the numbers going through on the 31 itself, obviously be the first one you would look at, but you know, there's other impacts that it's going to have too. So to give a total number, I'd have to look into that a little further to give an estimate. It's always interesting with these kind of projects that impact a main thoroughfare like this. You know, I go back to when we did the S-curve in Grand Rapids. You know, most people thought that was going to be Armageddon, and it went smoother than we thought. People found different ways to go. But you just never know. So, but I don't know if that's a number I could probably, we could talk after. I could probably come up with some sort of estimate or something. But it would take a little work looking at the whole system, I would think, on this, than just give you a number for 31.
I'm sure things have grown a lot since the last time you really took it apart or built it or whatever, that we'll obviously notice.
Right. And one of the big impacts in looking at it is, and one of the reasons we looked at doing it is that because of the congestion that happens at that stretch, you're seeing 120th and the other, and some of the east-west routes are taking some of that. That's our hope, is that when we widen it, that takes some of the heat off that local system. So it'll be interesting in the end to see how it all comes together. But that's certainly what our traffic forecasting is showing will happen when we do this, so.
Yeah, it'll make those others safer, too.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
The last that I saw, I haven't looked recently at Holland traffic numbers, but I think I kind of recall that in the range of 30, 40,000 ADT on
That'd be
31, so.
So if you start talking,
31.
you know, 20% diversion, you know, that's a significant amount of ADT starting to look for.
That's as big as the city.
Yeah, that's right.
The whole city every day.
Yeah, it's 42,000 here, that goes to 80.
Well, I'm sure this won't be the last time we talk about this topic, so. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Road Safety Expo recap.
Yeah, I wanted to let you know that we had a great event. We were very pleased with our Road Safety Expo, and this was the first time we'd ever pulled something off like this. So we weren't sure how many people would actually show. We ordered lunches and thankfully had only 3 sandwiches left over.
Wow, that's great.
So, but it was, you know, we had a lot of publicity, and thanks to all of you for getting the word out. You know, we were really pleased with the number of people that came, and just to see media and how they helped get the word out after the event. So the purpose of our event was to raise awareness, and I felt that we really did that. So we had nearly 100 people who stayed most of the 4 hours, although we did have it scheduled so that over the lunch hour, people could wander and talk to exhibitors. And we were commenting earlier that we did see a number of people drop off after that. They had individual workshops, especially those with younger children didn't stay through the day. We surveyed people to see what they thought. And, you know, I think that they were really pleased themselves. They felt it was worth their time. And there were a few things, especially organizing an event someplace else that we didn't know how it was going to go with the breakout sessions, but they were pleased. They thought it was well organized. You know, I think that, you know, the surveys really showed that they were pleased with the event. So, and I think the other thing that really struck us was the collaboration. And it was exciting to participate in the planning of it because it was so many different partners. And then at the event, you know, we had local units of government, we had many cyclists of different sorts. You know, the more advanced cyclists, we also had the leisure cyclists, but we were happy to see the diversity of people that came. So the one group that we were really trying to zero in on is the invisible cyclists. So we did talk about the different types, and so we need to keep working on that. And that's part of the conversation for next steps, which I'll talk about in just a moment. All right. We also asked people for ideas. You know, what did you like about it? What would you like to see different? And, you know, we were trying to find a location that was central. But I think that the recommendation from those who came was that we might want to consider a different location next time, just mix it up a bit. And then the time and duration, maybe consider an evening event. So we're definitely looking at a specific event with the Holland Rescue Mission. And we're open to other ideas on how we can continue to share all of this information that we now have. So, all right. Yeah, just wanted to kind of give you a heads up, but it was 4 hours on a Saturday, so we were pleased to see so many people who did come out and spend that time with us. All right.
Those invisible cyclists that were there, you just didn't see them.
Well, you know, that's one of the things that the media really picked up on that. And we started the event with a number of different people who stood up and represented the different type of cyclist. So I think that really had an impact on people when they realized the invisible cyclist doesn't have any, you know, they're just wearing their everyday gear. Dark colors can't be seen. So we spent a lot of time talking about visibility. And now the next step is how to get people lights and gear. So we're looking at possible funding opportunities that we might be able to pursue to be able to give that out.
You know, I really like the idea of maybe doing even a specific session right at the city mission. I think that would be a great way of getting that message out to that population as well.
Yeah.
So even if it be smaller, I think that'd be a good way to look next time.
Yeah, so we're happy. Good conversation, a good dialogue, and we'll see what happens next.
Terrific. Next,
I think Nancy.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing that. I mean, it's like a wellness program where you invest in people and explain things and encourage them to have healthy living, but you really don't know how many people you've saved from whatever. But you know you're making an investment in the right direction, and what's the alternative? people just getting hit.
Yeah.
So creating that conversation, continuing that same conversation, and I do think the invisible cyclist is very intriguing. It's a unique way to say it, and it draws people to, well, maybe there's something I don't know. Otherwise, you think, oh, I've ridden a bike all my life, I know what that is. But that tells you there's something else out there, and maybe you want to know about it. So I think that's a great way to sell it to people and to not get discouraged and saying the same things. And but I do think that was a great way to start, too, with the different types of cyclists and help people rethink it. It's a great initiative and something that so many communities don't have. But everybody says, oh, what a terrible accident, you know, now they hit that person on a bike, what a horrible thing. But they don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
This is great.
Very good point. Okay, great. And then moving on to the 2016 Green Commute Week.
Right. I can tell you that those that are involved in planning Green Commute Week have been hard at work, and it's always inspiring. Carolyn and I work on Green Commute together. You know, we've got our cold, dreary winter days. To be planning Green Commute is always a lot of fun. So I just wanted to give you just a few highlights for the event this year. And I wanted to let you know that this year we've extended the week. It starts on Sunday. And the reason we've done that is to be able to reach out to churches and faith-based organizations to encourage people to walk, bike, carpool, or use the MACC. So that's something that, you know, wherever possible, we want to start working on Sunday to get people to think about the rest of the week. And we're planning this event with a committee that's also many different partners, local law enforcement, and it's actually the local law enforcement that's helped us reach out to the schools. So last year we had our first school challenge on Wednesday. We'll have one again this year. And we're reaching out to make sure we get more elementary and high school students involved. We have a video contest as well. We did that last year, and that's a great way to get the word out. So we're continuing that. And then lastly, I just wanted to remind you that the leadership ride and breakfast will be on Saturday the 21st. So you're all encouraged to come. If you don't have a bike, we can provide a bike for you and a helmet. And then at our next meeting, I have materials that I'll be giving you. We have some postcards and other materials just to be able to set out for people so that they can get involved as well. All right. Does anyone have any questions on Green Commute?
We have the route planned for the week.
We're not sure on the route. We're talking about, it depends on where the breakfast is. We're going to try.
Well, it'd be good to end at the breakfast.
Yes, I agree.
Or begin at the breakfast.
Yeah, so we're working on that. We have a committee that's actually helping with the planning of the route. But most likely, City of Holland North Side or Holland Charter Township. So,
perfect.
yeah. We try and mix it up. We try and have it at a different location every year, so. All right.
And also, the ozone non-attainment area designation.
Okay. This is something that you've asked questions in the past about ozone, the non-attainment designation. And so the purpose of this presentation today is just to give you a brief overview. And we have asked MDEQ staff to come and give you more details about this process. But we just wanted to give you kind of a little preparation in terms of what's been going on and what some of the decisions are that are coming up. So I'm going to try and just be as brief as possible, but feel free to ask questions. And if I don't have the answers, I'll try and find answers for you on these topics. All right, so as you all know, in October, the US EPA announced a new standard. And that's something that we are working with. That new standard is 70 parts per billion. On this next slide here, that's the big thing that we're working with. And then the other piece of air quality information that we're working with is the monitor data. The preliminary monitor data showed the Holland area, the 3-year average was exceeding the 75 parts per billion standard. And again, it's looking back, how well we complied with the last standard. But the good news I have to share with you is that, well, I've got a few different points I want to tell you about the monitor data, but the good news first is that the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality validates that data. So we were working with preliminary estimates, and we could see that the MACC area was just slightly above the standard. But it looks like the monitor data, after it was validated, brings us back to 75 parts per billion, which is really good for the 3-year average. So I'm going to talk about that more, but I just want to bring that to your attention, that that's really good news, and that was a surprise to us. But with that, the other pieces I want to bring to your attention are that looking at the monitor data, the lakeshore communities typically have the highest ozone levels. And it's also, we can see that the ozone levels dissipate as the air moves inland. So that's another piece to keep in mind. And now the last point on that slide is that the designation area needs to be determined. This year, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality will make a recommendation about what that area is. So they're basically recommending the geographic area that will be either in or non-attainment. And there's a lot of analysis that's involved in that, and that's why we've invited MDEQ to come and present that to you. But I just wanted to give you just the background in terms of where things are and how things are looking right now. Some other things that we learned just this last month, Carolyn Ulstead and I are part of the West Michigan Clean Air Coalition, so we meet with MDEQ staff, with the other 2 MPOs that we work together in partnership with, and the Michigan Department of Transportation. And they basically gave us kind of a report for 2015, and it sounds like our cold winter last year at our frozen lake was actually a real benefit to our area, because it was a relatively easy summer. Those were the words that were shared with us. So, you know, we reported before that the Holland monitor did exceed the standard, but in terms of statewide, it was actually a pretty good summer. So, the other piece of information that I thought you might want to know about as well was that if the 70 parts per billion ozone standard were what we were following last summer, we could have seen the Holland monitor exceed the new standard 4 days. So we exceeded twice, but we could have expected double that number. So just to give you a sense of, you know, the 2 standards and what that means for our area, something to be aware of. And why is this important? Why am I, you know, I guess that what I want you to understand is that this designation area is a decision that the MDEQ is going to make now. They're going to make a recommendation that the US EPA will then finalize in 2017. So the next slide kind of helps you understand why I brought up the monitor data initially. The state recommends the designation area based on the 2013 through 15 monitor data, so it's a 3-year average. But the US EPA will then make that final decision in 2017 using 2014 through 16 data. And what that means, and I guess my message to you all, is that, you know, we are really pleased, we're excited to see that the monitor data showed that we're doing better than we were thinking that we were doing. We still have 1 year, so our work is not done. And I think that's the thing that we're excited about, having Green Commute and other opportunities to reach the community. We want to be able to have a really good summer, and that would help all of us to be able to show compliance. It's certainly a strong message to the MDEQ when we can show that our community is doing what they can to reduce air emissions. So more is yet to come, yeah.
So just like with the phosphorus, we work upstream for where's the problem coming from. The lakeshore communities have this problem. Do we talk to Wisconsin and Chicago?
Well, I know that there's a transport issue, and I know that this is something that has been under study. You know, I can't really give you a status report on how the states are talking to each other at this point, but I know that that's being considered by the US EPA,
Yeah,
so,
because we know the weather comes from the west.
yeah,
Brings
and,
things with it.
right, and with what the earlier findings, looking at the monitor data, that the ozone dissipates as you get further inland, so.
Well,
Just a comment, I would suggest that if they ever learn how to color code ozone, we'll be 100% compliance always. 'Cause all that stuff's coming over from Gary and Chicago.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's a reality, and then that's something that we certainly talk about, the transport issue. But with that, it's still important just to send the message that our community cares and that we're doing something. So,
I was even thinking too, because we do produce stuff here and that goes somewhere else. So even if it's not for ourselves, it's for someone else down the road.
yeah,
Terry, did you have a thought?
Well, yeah, this has come up before, obviously, around this table, and, you know, it somewhat depends on what administration is also in office. I know that, you know, Pete Hoekstra addressed this very issue about the flow across the lake, and he was able to obtain favorable results for us here. And, you know, so it's somewhat dependent on politics, quite frankly.
well, another part of this equation too is that one of the reasons the MDEQ, we talked to them about coming this month, and they said that they're waiting because the US EPA has some final guidance that they're going to be sharing with them. But there's a new model that they're going to be using that can look at the trajectories for those air masses. So that's going to be an important part of their analysis as well. So, yeah.
I was just going to add a little bit to the history, too. At one point in the 90s, it looked like because of this designation for this area in parts of West Michigan, that we are going to have to start a certification program, that every year you'd have to bring your car in and get it certified in terms of how much emission was given out and everything else. And that's when the transfer topic came up back in the 90s. The Engler administration at one point threatened to sue, or maybe even started legal proceedings because of the transport, and didn't want that action to happen, where the certification would be implemented. And I don't know if it was a threat of suit or political connections or whatever, but the EPA did back off. So the battle's been fought before, or you know, pieces of it. Whether it'll be revisited again when things changed in 17, remain to be seen. But yeah, the issue's been out there and discussed, and there has been action taken against it before.
They had the centers built already, didn't they?
Mhm.
The auto
Yep,
check center.
they did.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are there any specific questions that you have before the MDEQ comes? And they'll talk to you about the modeling process and the trajectories of air masses if that's something you're interested in. But if you have any questions, just feel free to let me know, because we'd love to have the MDEQ come and be able to answer any other questions you have.
Do you know if they sample in the middle of the lake?
I do not know, but I'll ask.
I'd be very interested to see what those readings are compared to ours. Because if you have no population, no land mass, and the quantitative data suggests that it's very similar to ours, there's a direct correlation there between what's coming over from across the lake and what we have.
That
Yeah.
should be our baseline, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a national conversation.
yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's a great suggestion, and we'll look into it and see what's being done to sample on the lake. All right.
That doesn't negate our responsibility, but our responsibility can only go so far.
Right.
And it gets depressing if you never address the bigger picture, you know.
Yep. All right, well, thank you all, and feel free, again, if, before we have the DEQ come in, let me know if you have any other questions, we'll look into those.
Thank you. Next up, MDOT Federal Highway comments. John, Steve.
I guess the only comment I have is that we'll be meeting with Steve and staff coming up, this is the
March 1.
March 1, yeah, to talk about next year's Unified Work Program, and what's called a pre-UWP meeting. So that'll be occurring. And we're also in the process of working with Steve and company in the new TIP that's being developed, the 17 to 20 TIP, which many of you worked on, and your staffs to develop projects for, will be entered into a new electronic TIP system. So we'll be working with Steve and staff and getting all those projects entered into that new electronic system, which hopefully will make the processing of TIP amendments a lot more efficient. Anytime you have a new project that, or a change in a project that needs to occur, that those approvals can be approved a lot sooner and quicker, get through the various levels quicker. So
It's going to be wonderful when it's fully implemented. It really is.
well, a new governmental computer system.
Yeah. Well, there may be a few glitches, but
Eventually it'll
Making
be wonderful.
progress.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. Steve?
Just a quick note that we are engaging in, and we're going to put out a RFP for a grand region, which is now 13 counties, non-motorized plan. I may have mentioned this here before, but what it is we're going to try to foster, facilitate some regional cooperation on trail systems. Obviously, there's been a great job done here, as well as other areas in West Michigan, and we're really hoping this plan can start to tie this stuff together and increase that network, as well as address some other issues related to non-motorized pathways and non-motorized transportation.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Administrative issues.
Yep, included in your agenda packet is the monthly financial report showing revenues and expenditures through January. Revenues are sitting at 58.4%, expenses at 25.7%. Be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the report.
Executive committee report.
Yep, a summary of our last executive committee meeting was included in the agenda packet. Be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding that. Fortunately, Hannes was able to attend that meeting. He's not here today because he fell and cracked a rib. So he's in quite a bit of pain today. So we hope that he recovers from that quickly as well.
Right now, the executive committee is not the place to be.
No, it's kind of dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm wondering.
He's retiring, he's gonna get out before.
Exactly. I see the writing on the wall. Going back then to the bylaw revision number 3, I guess will be just a discussion item. Steve?
Yeah, so included in your agenda packet was some proposed language for amending the bylaws. If you had a chance to look at Article 12 of the bylaws, it states that for the bylaws to be amended, it requires a 2/3 vote of the entire board. So we need 13 members of our 19-member committee present to act on something like this. So unfortunately, we're too shy today. So it's unusual that we don't have, close to our full quota in terms of members, but unfortunately today we don't. So we're actually not going to be able to act on them, but certainly I can answer any questions you might have. I don't know how extensive a discussion we want to have regarding them at this point, since we're not going to be able to act on them. I'll leave it to the will of the group as to how much detail we want to get into at this point regarding the proposed revisions, since we're not able to act on them today.
So Huntsberger is still in Florida, which means I get to be good cop today. As you might imagine, I've had a lot of emails from him concerning the bylaws. And anybody who's been in these meetings recognizes that he's very vehement about some things. I just have a couple of questions. We have an organization that is put together of dues-paying entities, public entities, that is being driven by an executive committee consisting of people who are not either. And my question is, was it, when the original bylaws were done, was this an attempt to make sure that this organization does not ever get politicized?
You know, my understanding from my predecessor is that the founders of the MACC, as it relates, and what Skip is alluding to there, if you had a chance to review the bylaws again, there are essentially 4 categories of policy committee members. So you have your city and township representatives, it's kind of one category. You have your county participants, which are Ottawa and Allegan County. You have your transportation participants, which is MDOT, the road commissions, and Macatawa Area Express. And then the last category is your at-large members. And if you had a chance to read the bylaws, it's from the at-large members, and the bylaws allow up to 5 at-large board members. They constitute the officers and the executive committee. Now, the proposed bylaws revision is to allow a sitting city or township representative to join the 5 at-large members to constitute the executive committee. So that's the major or substantive change that's being proposed by the bylaws. There are a couple other things in there as well. But I think, you know, the founders were saying, you know, the majority of the board is comprised of public officials or appointees representing public entities. And I think the desire was to have the other sectors of the community involved in the decision-making process. And so that was done through the at-large board membership. And then, indeed, it was decided that it was from those at-large board members that the executive committee would be constituted.
And
So
let me add something that maybe will shed some light on what the executive committee actually does. We don't drive anything. Steve works with all the different committees and often reports things through us. Our role really has been as an advisory group that Steve can talk to freely and get some advice and counsel on, you know, I mean, every executive or executive director needs that space to be able to talk freely and get good advice. So it's really been more of an advisory board. We don't direct any decisions that has nothing to do with it. The other thing to keep in mind is it's entirely voluntary. We don't get paid for our time or for mileage or anything like that. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about adding more people to it. I would have some concerns if it got real top-heavy with public officials, just as a taxpayer at large.
I just, you know, I bring it up because my puzzlement is Steve and I are both ex officio members of the Chamber of Commerce, representing our organizations. And I was just thinking that if the Chamber of Commerce, which is composed of business people, had an executive committee composed of the guys in this room, we'd probably lose membership pretty quickly.
That's a good point.
Again, I'm trying to be good cop here. But the fact remains is, what I've seen of the executive committee's actions over the years, for example, not replacing one of your members after a 5-year hiatus and things like that, I would submit that if we were having a vote today, the only way you would get a yes from me, from Park Township, would be with the assurance that vacant positions will be filled within 30 to 60 days, and that in October we would have a full slate of at-large members brought before this board for an individual up and down vote. That would be the only way you'd get a yes from me today. So just wanted you to know that while I'm a quieter guy, And Park Township is trying to be very thoughtful about this whole thing. We're still not real happy with the bylaw change. That's my only comment.
And the second part of that comment there, indeed, if you had a chance to review the document, there is a process embedded in the bylaws for this election of the at-large board members on an annual basis. It says, if you had a chance to read it, that at the October meeting of every year, kind of our organizational meeting, since we're in October 1st fiscal year, the board, the other 15 members are to elect the at-large members. Now, for those of you who have some tenure on this board, you probably can't recall the last time that's been done. And that's because I did go back and take a look, and the last time we did that was in 2000. So it hasn't been a practice that we've been following for about 15 years now. So certainly, Jerry, who has been sitting on the nominating committee and participating in that, has called us to, hey, let's follow the bylaws in terms of making sure that we do follow them in terms of having the election for at-large members. So that seems very reasonable.
And again, back to decisions in your comparison, I don't know that the chamber comparison is appropriate here. All the decisions that the MACC makes are made through here. So I'm not quite sure that I don't know the structure of the chamber board, but there's nothing that we do that is, okay, this is done on behalf of you guys. So just understand that part of it.
Yeah, the executive board doesn't vote on anything. Yeah, ours is strictly an advisory role, mainly to Steve.
Yeah, that's how it has functioned since the last 5 years, whatever. Yeah, it's been about 5 years now.
Yeah, I tend to characterize it as a sounding board, to bring various matters forward that I'm, contemplating or facing and, seeking advice in that regard.
I think probably part of the thinking was each person is in their own little corner, and you would like advice from people that can see beyond
That,
responsibilities that you've been elected for, to have a more regional feel. So we're saying that these bylaws is kind of a living document.
Any further discussion? We'll bring this up again at
Next month.
At our next month.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll have a two-thirds quorum
Yeah.
at that time where we can take some action on this.
Yeah, I sat in, I was a member of the nominating committee, as a few of us were, and we did have this discussion about many things. From all due respect to our friends from Park Township, I think we're making this a little more complicated than what it really is. I mean, all we want to do, or all I see that we want to do, is add a member of a city or township participant to the executive committee, just to have a voice. And,
that's fine.
yeah, that's all really.
But to misunderstand and mischaracterize what this group has been doing in giving of their own time is inappropriate.
I would agree.
So then, assuming an affirmative vote by 2/3 here, if you had a chance to read it, it has to be ratified by all the city and township boards and councils as well. So once we come to agreement or conclusion around this table, then it'll go to places like we're sitting right now for their review as well. So
you need 100% ratification?
yeah, all 9 cities and township boards and councils have to approve this as well. By a 2/3.
Good luck.
Yeah, so that's why, as we were talking with the nominating
Let's take on
committee,
world peace while we're at it.
Wow.
By the time, and I have to make sure it's to you 15 days prior to your meeting as well. So it'll take a few months. Like we said, we take action around this table next month, and if it's approved, then, over the course of the next 2 to 3 months, be visiting each of your township boards or councils as well. And that'll give us an opportunity to give an update on other activities and so forth. So we can certainly,
It's called windshield time.
yeah.
Okay. Moving on to our member comments, our host member, the Honorable Nancy DeBoer from the City of Holland.
Welcome to Holland City Hall. Glad to have you here, and a kind of a freshman welcomer. I'm glad to be a part of the MACC, and I do think it has a great purpose in watching over water and transportation. You have to have somebody with a 20,000-foot view. And you know, I have 3 children, and I know what it is to deal with different people and different wants and whatever. So having everyone think together and having an organization that helps everybody think together about things we know are important, but we may not have time for that in the demand of the immediate and the daily. I think it really does serve a wonderful purpose. I'm thankful for the people that had the foresight to put this together. And we're excited this year, 2016, in Holland, because a lot of really great things are happening, and I'm sure you've heard of many of them, and it's looking like that hotel is going to open. You can see through windows and people walking around now, so that's really cool. And of course, the power plant will be opening and hopefully testing this coming December. That is so exciting, and the decommissioning of the James D. Young plant in connection with that will open other possibilities for us that we are very excited about, and the pursuing of fiber optics as a potential for fast internet is another thing that has risen on the horizon that the council is very much behind, and we hope that we can make that happen. And we've been talking about two-way traffic on 7th and 9th, and we're still working on that. That's going to be a little bit longer conversation. We will be trying two-way on 7th Street this summer as we incapacitate 9th with all of our connections from the power plant. And Central Avenue in Holland is kind of like 31 for the region, and you know, we lost this little street we took for granted, because anytime any other street was closed, everybody took Central, and all of a sudden Central couldn't be taken. And then, of course, the 9th Street and those intersections all went bananas. And so it was quite the rat in a maze feeling for people last summer. And I'm hoping this year, with moving 31 a little further along and just doing 9th Street, that we'll be able to help people get around better. And we are working real hard on communication, and that is another huge benefit of the MACC and conversations with MDOT to be able to oversee that communication process. It would be great to have an app that people could have on their phones to know where to drive, where it's less congested. I don't know if we can get to that level with technology, but that would be a really great thing to be able to offer people as we do a project like 31. And we so appreciate MDOT and all of your help with your M40 conversations coming in for some of those meetings. God bless you. That was not easy, and we really appreciated that kind of level of partnership. Really makes such a stronger community. So yeah, there's all kinds of exciting things, and I'm not going to go into everything, but I'm just glad that everybody came, as many of you came as did, and everybody else just missed out. So, thanks for being here.
Hey, Steve, Nancy's thing about closing the Young power plant, maybe this is something the MACC should look into. I know Muskegon's looking into it with becoming more of a port to bring in things. You know, the tonnage loss of their coal, I don't know how that's going to affect the dredging of the channel and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
There's no more coal coming in.
right.
Right, and they were the largest contributor to the tonnage, although we've been below the threshold for several years already, actually, and really are getting our dredging money through earmarks, and appropriation bills and so forth. So when you take out the coal shipments, I don't know if that's going to make getting that earmark even more difficult, as tonnage starts to look more and more like Saugatucks, for instance. And that's right. Yeah, exactly. Who are unable to get earmarks. 6 because the tonnage is so low. So you're right. I mean, if we agree that the harbor is a regional asset and provides benefits to the entire region, then it'd be completely within the bailiwick of the MACC to talk about how we're going to keep at least the outer harbor going, which gets it annually or almost every year. So, you know, the inner harbor, and that's a much lower price tag too. But that's right. You don't want that to shoal in, so.
Any other comments? If not, our next meeting will be March 28th in the beautiful downtown city of Zeeland at the Howard Miller Community Center at noon.
BYO.
With that comment, I'd be looking forward to motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. I love it.
Thank you.